At my wedding, Mom announced, "We are giving the car his parents bought you to your sister." My sister laughed, until my groom pulled out the keys and said, "Not anymore. My name is Marissa, and I'm 31 years old." The band had just transitioned from the sweeping violins of our first dance to something softer, something you could actually breathe to. Crystal glasses clinked in perfect rhythm. Someone's Aunt Gloria, probably, laughed too loudly near the champagne fountain. String lights cast gentle halos around everyone's heads, turning the reception hall into something almost magical. I could still taste the buttercream from our cake tasting on my tongue. You know that sweetness that hangs in the air when a moment tries to convince you it's absolutely perfect? That sugar-spun illusion that everything is exactly as it should be? And then my mother smiled. It was that smile. The one I'd grown up studying like a survival manual. Warm, radiant, impossibly practiced. A country club smile. A church choir smile. The kind of smile that tells everyone watching that everything is perfectly fine, even when the metaphorical house is burning down in the next room. She leaned in close enough that her Chanel No. 5 erased the last traces of vanilla frosting from the air. "We are passing along the Honda your boyfriend's parents gave you to your sister." The sentence arrived like a gift, wrapped in politeness. Like she'd simply rearranged the linen closet and found a more logical place for something I clearly wasn't using properly. Next to her, my younger sister Cassie tilted her head just so. The crystals on her bridesmaid dress caught the light like tiny private jokes. "Relax, Riss," she said, her voice smooth as expensive wine. "It's just a car." I didn't look at Cassie. I looked at my mother's teeth, set in that flawless line like pearls on a string. Right on cue, my father drifted closer, as if formality required a witness to this casual theft. Behind them, my husband, still such a new word, caught my eye. Garrett's eyebrows lifted just slightly. A question. He didn't move toward us. He didn't need to. We'd already decided who we were going to be in this marriage. There's a particular kind of silence that shows up at weddings. Not the empty silence of vacant rooms, but the heavy kind that folds itself over music, presses down on laughter, freezes smiles mid-crinkle. That silence arrived now, smoothing everything flat like a sheet of ice. Cassie's voice sliced through it. "It's honestly safer with me anyway," she added, with that little laugh she does. "My old Civic is literally falling apart." She laughed at her own line, because of course she did. Garrett's parents had presented us with the car at the rehearsal dinner the night before. A 2019 Honda Accord, clean, reliable, not flashy, but deeply meaningful. They'd handed me the title with both hands, like a blessing wrapped in legal paper. "You two are building something together," Garrett's father had said, his voice thick with emotion. "Here's something to help you move forward." The title was in my name. A welcome into their family that felt like trust, not just a transaction. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe that's what made it so easy for my family to think they could just take it. I've learned to recognize problems before they even have names. When we were kids, Cassie got the bigger bedroom. I got the explanation. "She's younger, sweetie. She needs more space to grow." When she spilled nail polish remover on my desk and it ate through the varnish like acid, Mom said, "You should have kept your schoolwork in your room where it belongs." Cassie borrowed my sweaters and returned them stretched out, pilled, sometimes with mysterious stains. I got lectures about sharing gracefully and being the bigger person. She totaled her first car, a sweet 16 gift from our parents. The rain was blamed. The wet roads. Bad timing. I worked 3 holiday seasons at Target, every Black Friday and Christmas Eve rush, to buy my first car at 19. The lesson was that I was dependable. The pattern was tidy as a hospital corner. Cassie would ask sweetly, smile gently, and when that didn't work, my parents would reach into their toolkit. Excuses, explanations, a whole chorus of "she's more sensitive and you're the strong one." I was the older sister. The cross-trained adult who could wait, who could compromise, who could hand things over without making a scene. I used to wear resilient like a badge of honor. By 31, it felt more like a rope that other people yanked whenever they needed something from me. Garrett's hand brushed my elbow. Just a tap. A question mark in physical form. I answered without looking at him. I slipped my fingers into my clutch and felt the weight of the slim envelope inside. Paper shouldn't feel heavy, but this did. This envelope had gravity. My mother's smile brightened like someone had adjusted her wattage. "We told her earlier," she said, the words chirping out like she was announcing a surprise vacation. "She's had such terrible luck with cars, and we thought, well, this would be more practical with her. You two can manage with one vehicle for now," she continued. Manage. Like she was tying a neat little bow on my life for me. I took a breath that tasted like broken glass. "You're giving away our wedding gift," I said. Not loud. Not accusing. Just a sentence that wanted acknowledgement, that wanted to exist in the room. Mom's smile barely trembled. "Don't make this into a thing, Marissa. It's just a car." "Your card was empty," I heard myself say. The words came from somewhere deeper than planning. "We took it as a symbolic gesture." I didn't plan that line. I think the line planned me. Across from me, Cassie's lips parted. Delighted outrage colored her cheeks like blush. "Wow," she breathed, half laughing like she was performing for an invisible audience. "You really think you're tough now, don't you?" Somewhere near the cake table, a phone camera lifted like it was moved by invisible hands. I leaned toward Garrett and whispered, "Give me the envelope." He didn't ask which one. He didn't ask if I was certain. He simply slid the envelope from my clutch with practiced ease and placed it in my palm. Palm to palm, like exchanging vows. My father reached for the envelope before my mother could, curiosity sharpening his features. Cassie leaned in, eyes hungry. They opened it like it might contain a check large enough to bend light. They weren't expecting legal paperwork. Mom's eyes flickered across the page, reading too quickly to hide her eagerness. The practiced smile didn't crack. It thinned, like paper stretched too tight. Cassie read over her shoulder and lost her smirk somewhere before the second paragraph. Dad pinched the top corner of the page, scanning, like the words might rewrite themselves out of embarrassment. "What is this?" he muttered. "A notarized declaration," I said, my voice steady enough to carry across the suddenly quiet room. "Executed 2 weeks ago. It states that all wedding gifts, including the vehicle titled in my name, cannot be sold, gifted, or transferred without my written notarized consent." I paused, letting that sink in. Any attempt to reassign ownership will trigger an automatic legal review and restrict any future inheritance arrangements from Garrett's family. The music didn't stop so much as wilt. "You can't be serious," Cassie said, a thin edge of panic sharpening every syllable. "You're threatening us? At your own wedding?" "You made a public claim," I answered calmly. "I'm setting a public boundary." Dad let out a laugh with no humor inside it. "This is petty, Marissa. Completely over the top. It's a car, not a child." "No," I said. "It's principle. It's every principle you taught me that only seemed to apply when Cassie didn't want something." Mom slid the paper back into the envelope like it had personally insulted her. "We are family," she hissed softly. "You don't treat family like criminals." "You went into our garage last night," I said, the words quiet as a blade being drawn. "You took photos of the car. Posted them online." Cassie blinked slowly, like a deer deciding whether the world was real. "It was a joke," she said weakly. "Symbolic." "Symbolic of what?" Garrett asked. His first word since this began, and his tone was glass calm. "Unbreakable. That your presence was the real gift," Cassie tried. A gasp scattered through the crowd like startled birds. Mom's smile finally cracked. I could feel a tremor beginning in my legs, the aftershock of choosing yourself in public. It should have felt like an earthquake. Instead, it felt like stepping onto solid ground after months at sea. Unsteady, yes. But underneath, the blessed promise of something that wouldn't shift. Cassie squared her shoulders, finding her footing in accusation. "You've always been like this," she said with false confidence. "Self-righteous. Both of you." I turned to face her fully. I didn't raise my voice. "You've coasted on apologies I had to make for you. You've dodged consequences like they were coats other people could wear. You call it family. I call it access." "Enough," Dad said, trying to reclaim control of the room. "This is a wedding, for heaven's sake." "And this," I said clearly, "is the last day I pretend this pattern doesn't exist." Garrett's fingers threaded through mine. 1, 2, 3. A silent countdown. The band waited. The guests waited. The old script waited for me to obey it, to fold, to make this easy. I didn't. I took out a second envelope and held it between two fingers. Cassie's name was printed on the front in careful letters. She stared at it like it might burst into flames. Mom moved to snatch it, but I pulled it back half an inch. A boundary made visible in real time. This one is real, I said gently. Not symbolic. Consider it documentation. Behind us, someone's fork clinked against china. Somewhere far away, a champagne cork popped with indecent cheerfulness. Dance, Garrett said to the band, softly, like issuing a dare. The drummer lifted his sticks. The singer looked at me as if I were conducting an orchestra. I nodded once. The music rose like a tide. The room inhaled collectively. Cassie's mouth opened around a fresh argument, but the bass line swallowed it whole. We turned, Garrett and I, into the song. My mother's smile finally fell completely off her face. Cassie's crystals stopped winking. The envelope waited in my hand like a truth with sharp edges. I pressed it into my father's palm as we passed him on the dance floor. Help isn't theft, I said quietly. And love isn't unlimited access. We danced. Not for show. For reclamation. At the edge of my vision, I saw my mother standing frozen, visibly working on constructing a new smile that would fit what the room had become. For once, I hoped it wouldn't come. The music was still playing when the whispers started. I could feel them ripple through the round tables like the slow roll of a tide coming in. Cousins muttering behind their hands. An aunt pretending to fix her napkin while her phone camera shook slightly. One of my mother's book club friends mouthed the word drama behind her champagne flute. That's the thing about families like mine. They love an audience almost as much as they hate accountability. My mother stood frozen beside the cake table, her face painted with politeness, but her eyes narrow and trembling. Cassie kept trying to laugh it off, producing a brittle, high-pitched sound that didn't match her usual charm. She still thought she could salvage the scene. Seriously, Marissa, she said, her voice cracking with disbelief. You can't actually be doing this over a car. Garrett squeezed my hand, but I didn't look at him. This isn't about a car, I said quietly. It's about everything that was ever mine somehow becoming hers. Cassie let out a scoff, her tone rising. Oh my God, are we really going to rehash high school drama right now? You're married. Move on already. High school was practice, I said. You took my room, my clothes, my peace of mind. This was just your graduation project. The room trembled under the weight of uncomfortable laughter. Someone turned down the music. It wasn't quiet anymore. It was tense. Mom's voice sliced through it like a knife. We are not doing this here, Marissa. Stop embarrassing yourself. Myself. I repeated, blinking. You announced you were giving away my wedding gift in public. That's not embarrassment, Mom. That's theft with hors d'oeuvres. Dad ran a hand through his thinning hair, muttering to her, just let it go, Diane. But he wasn't looking at her when he said it. He was looking at me the way someone stares at a stranger who suddenly knows too much. Cassie's expression flickered with something I'd witnessed my entire life. Panic, poorly hidden beneath privilege. She leaned in, trying to soften her approach. Riss, you know I'm struggling financially, right? My old Civic is basically dead, and your new Honda is just sitting there. There it was. The justification. The quiet entitlement dressed up as desperate need. Garrett finally spoke, his voice even and controlled. We are not running a charity operation, Cassie. Her face flushed red. Easy for you to say, Mr. Trust Fund. You married up. Garrett's jaw tightened visibly, but before he could respond, I stepped in. You mean he married someone who doesn't cave to manipulation anymore? Cassie blinked rapidly. What's that supposed to mean? It means the free ride just ended. A murmur swept across the tables like wind through wheat. My mother's hand trembled as she tried desperately to reclaim control of the narrative. Everyone, please calm down, she said, her voice quivering with false grace. This has gone quite far enough. But I wasn't finished. Mom, I said softly, did you know Cassie broke into our garage last night? That froze her mid-breath. She took photos of the car, posted them on Instagram. Caption: "Finally got a ride that fits my lifestyle." Mom's lips parted. Dad frowned deeply. Cassie's hand jerked toward her phone like she could somehow delete the evidence retroactively. How did you?" she stammered. "Security footage," I said, keeping my tone flat and factual. "And your post had a geotag." A soft gasp scattered from various guests. Cassie turned scarlet. "You're literally stalking me now." "No," Garrett said calmly. "We just monitor who tries to access our garage at midnight." The room's atmosphere shifted completely. The fake warmth evaporated like morning fog. All that remained was truth. Heavy, unfiltered, unavoidable. I reached into my clutch again. The movement alone was enough to make my mother's head snap toward me like I'd pulled a weapon. She thought it was another envelope, another public blow. It was. "This," I said, holding up a crisp sheet of paper, "is a notice of unauthorized access and misuse of personal property. We plan to send it quietly through our lawyer, but since this conversation is now public." Cassie's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Mom snatched the paper from my hand, eyes scanning frantically. "You're being ridiculous," she hissed. "This is family business, not something you drag lawyers into." "Family business," I repeated, my voice breaking into a shaky laugh. "That's what you said when she maxed out my debit card when I was 17. When she totaled the car Grandpa helped me buy. When she sold my laptop and called it borrowing. Every single time, you turned it into untouchable family business." My father's voice cut in, sharp as gravel. "You're making a complete fool of yourself, Marissa. Sit down." I turned to him, finally meeting his eyes directly. "I've been sitting down for 31 years, Dad. You just never bothered to notice." The silence that followed felt alive. Dense. Suffocating. Garrett's voice broke through it, steady and crystal clear. "Would appreciate it if no one touched our property again. That includes our car, our house, or anything connected to my family's name." Cassie's eyes flared. "Your family's name. So that's what this is really about? Status?" "No," Garrett said simply. "Respect." Mom tried one last desperate time to salvage her dignity. "We raised you to be kind, Marissa. To be generous and giving." "You raised me to give," I said. "And you taught Cassie to take. There's a difference." That landed like thunder splitting the sky. For a second, even the string lights seemed to flicker. Cassie stepped forward, actually trembling now. "You really think you're better than me now?" "No," I said quietly. "Just done letting you decide what I owe." Her lower lip quivered. "You're heartless." "Then maybe you should stop trying to find my pulse in my bank account." A few guests actually gasped out loud. One of Garrett's uncles, Uncle William, clapped quietly, like a man who knew the satisfaction of long overdue boundaries finally being set. Mom's voice was almost pleading now. "We are family. We can fix this later. In private." "No," I said. "Later is how you kept me small for 3 decades. Cassie tried to laugh again, but the sound cracked halfway through like thin ice. "You're not perfect either, Marissa." "Never claimed to be," I replied evenly. "But at least I'm not pretending theft is love." Her eyes brimmed with frustrated tears. "You'll regret this." "I already did," I said softly. "For 31 years. And with that, I turned away. Garrett took my hand and guided me back toward the dance floor. The song had shifted into something slow, almost cinematic in its swelling emotion. We didn't speak as we began moving again. Around us, the guests pretended to eat, pretended to chat, pretended not to stare at the wreckage we'd left behind. When the song ended, we bowed slightly to the band as if absolutely nothing had happened. But everyone in that room knew everything had changed. That night, after the reception finally ended, we drove home in the same Honda they'd tried to claim as their own. Windows down, autumn wind wild in our hair, silence somehow louder than any argument could ever be. When we pulled into our driveway, Garrett turned off the engine and said quietly, "You okay?" I stared at our house, the little craftsman we'd bought together, the quiet tree-lined street, the empty peaceful night. I'm more than okay, I said slowly. I'm finally done. He smiled, reaching for my hand in the darkness. Good. Because something tells me your family isn't done trying. He was right, of course. The next morning, they proved it. The morning after the wedding felt like waking up in someone else's life. My dress hung over the bedroom chair like a ghost. The bouquet had wilted in its vase. The silence in our kitchen wasn't peaceful, it was watchful, waiting. Garrett brewed coffee while I scrolled my phone, half asleep, half bracing for impact. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity is a stubborn thing. The first post hit like static in my chest. Cassie Harper, some people value money more than family. Hope it's worth it. Broken heart. 53 likes. 3 heart emojis. 1 comment from Mom, letting go is painful, but sometimes necessary. Still praying for those who forget where they came from. Person with praying hands. I stared at it until the screen dimmed automatically. Don't, Garrett said softly. Don't read it again. I'm not, I lied. He slid a coffee mug toward me. She's trying to rewrite the story before it sets in people's minds. He was right. That's how my family operated. Whoever spoke first got to define reality. The truth was just whatever sounded polite enough to repeat at brunch. But this time, the real story was ours. We owned it. We'd planned to leave for our honeymoon that morning, drive up the Pacific Coast Highway in our car, the one they'd tried to steal. We didn't even have a firm destination, just a map dotted with places neither of us had ever seen. As I packed, another notification pinged. This time it was worse. A GoFundMe link. Title: Vehicle Emergency Caused by Family Betrayal. Goal: $8,000. Organizer: Cassie Harper. The description was written in her typical flowery, self-victimizing tone. My sister and her husband blindsided me on their wedding day. I lost access to the reliable transportation that was promised to me, and now I have no way to get to my job. I'm just trying to rebuild my life. Every little bit helps. Thank you for your kindness. Person with praying hands, 2 hearts. 2 donors. $18 raised. 1 name stood out. Karma, $10. Garrett burst out laughing when I showed him. Karma literally donated? You cannot make this up. I took a screenshot and closed the app. She'll delete it when she realizes people aren't buying the victim act. He looked at me seriously. And when she does, she'll find another way to play victim. She always does, I agreed. The drive started quiet, the kind of quiet that felt earned, deserved. We rolled past city limit signs and into stretches of coastal highway that hummed like freedom itself. No messages. No expectations. Just wind and terrible gas station coffee, and the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly beside us. At one rest stop, I caught my reflection in the car window. No makeup. Hair in a messy bun. Eyes still tired but somehow alive. You look peaceful, Garrett observed. I feel unhooked, I admitted. Like I've been holding my breath for a decade and finally remembered how to inhale properly. He smiled. Boundaries will do that to a person. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. Every mile between us and my parents felt like a wall I should have built years ago. 3 days later, while sitting by a lake with our feet in the cold water, my phone buzzed with a long message from Mom. Mom, you're still angry. This has gone too far. Family helps family. That's how we raised you, Marissa. Call me when you're ready to apologize. I stared at it for a full minute. The words felt like a net trying to pull me back into the same suffocating role I'd finally escaped. Then I replied with a single photo. Not of us smiling. Not of the wedding. Not even of the car. Just the notarized legal document. Caption: Help isn't theft. I blocked her number immediately afterward. Not out of hate. Out of habit breaking. Back home, we unpacked slowly, the air in our house feeling different. Lighter. Sharper. Cleaner. The family group chats went silent. My cousin's messages dried up completely. The thread that once pinged daily with good morning, memes and who's hosting Sunday dinner, notifications was dead. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It felt earned. 2 weeks passed before the next ripple arrived. A cousin texted, "You guys okay? Aunt Diane said there was some kind of fight at your wedding?" Me? Not a fight. A boundary. No response. Just 3 dots that blinked for a while, then vanished like smoke. The silence became its own kind of peace. Garrett and I went back to work. We stopped explaining ourselves to anyone. We started building new traditions: slow Sunday breakfasts, evening drives with no destination, music with no lyrics to distract us. Sometimes I'd see Cassie's name pop up in suggested posts, her carefully curated happiness shining like glass. Transparent and fragile. I stopped clicking. One evening while sorting through our wedding photos, I found one nobody else had noticed. It wasn't staged. Wasn't smiling. Wasn't perfect. It was taken seconds after the confrontation. Mom's hand frozen midair. Cassie's mouth half open in shock. My expression unreadable. Garrett beside me, calm and solid as a mountain. Some friend must have snapped it accidentally. I printed it and tucked it into the back of a photo frame, behind all the beautiful staged pictures. Because perfection is a lie, but truth, even when it cuts, is worth preserving. I realized that was my favorite photo from the entire night. Because it was real. The piece lasted about 3 weeks before the guilt arrived. Not theirs, mine. It started in small doses, like a cough that wouldn't go away. Every quiet morning felt slightly haunted by that internal voice I'd been trained to obey since childhood. You're the problem if they're upset. That's what being the resilient one does to you. It rewires your brain to feel guilty for surviving. Garrett noticed before I did. You've been staring at that same coffee mug for 10 minutes, he said one morning. What's going on in your head? I shrugged. Just detoxing, I guess. He tilted his head. Detoxing? Yeah. I forced a smile. From obligation. He nodded slowly, understanding immediately. Then let's keep going. That afternoon, we did something ceremonial. Mundane to outsiders, but life-changing to me. We changed all the locks. The old keys clattered into the trash with a sound that felt wonderfully final. New smart locks. New entry codes. No more emergency contacts listed under Mom or Dad's names. For years, I'd left them away in, literal and emotional. Spare key under the doormat. Credit card on auto-pay for family emergencies. Shared passwords for streaming services they never paid for. I'd told myself it was love. Really, it was fear. That day, I let go of all of it. 3 therapy sessions later, I said something out loud that surprised even me. I'm not grieving them. I'm detoxing from them. My therapist smiled softly. Tell me more about that distinction. I thought I missed them, I said slowly. But I think I just missed being predictable. Their version of me was easy. The fixer, the forgiver, the one who never said no. Letting that version die feels selfish. But it's not selfish, she interrupted gently. It's self-respect. That word hit hard. Respect. Something I'd handed out like free samples at Costco. By the 4th session, I was ready to make it practical. I deleted the old family emergency contacts from my phone, numbers that had only ever rung for financial rescues, never for birthdays or congratulations. I replaced my mom's number in my favorites with my therapist's. It wasn't revenge. It was logic. Then I walked over to our refrigerator and peeled off the family photos one by one. Most of them were fake smiles anyway. Posed peace. I left exactly one photo up. The candid shot from the wedding. The one taken seconds after truth detonated in that reception hall. Mom mid-frown. Cassie stunned. Me holding that envelope like a shield. Garrett steady beside me like an anchor. It wasn't a happy photo. But it was real, and that's all I wanted anymore. People started testing the new boundaries soon after. My aunt sent a casual "how's married life?" text that quickly morphed into "you know your mother is heartbroken, right?" A cousin messaged, "Don't you think it's time to forgive? She's your mom." But forgiveness isn't a light switch you flip for public comfort. It's a boundary you reinforce for private peace. I didn't respond to most messages. When I did, I kept it brutally simple. Me, forgiveness isn't owed. Respect is. The replies stopped coming after that. One afternoon, Garrett found me sitting on our porch, staring at the horizon like it held answers. "Regretting it?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. No. Just noticing the quiet. He sat beside me. It's weird at first. Huh? The silence. It's not the silence that's weird, I said slowly. It's the absence of noise I thought was love. He didn't answer. He just held my hand until the sun went down. A week later, I got a missed call from my dad. No voicemail. Just the ghost of his number blinking on my screen like a test. I didn't call back. Because calling back meant stepping onto the same stage they'd already burned down. The next day, I found a letter slipped under our front door. No return address. Inside was a printed photo from childhood. Cassie and me on our old porch, arms around each other, grinning like we were equals. Scrawled on the back in Mom's distinctive handwriting, "Don't let anger erase your memories." For a second, my throat tightened. Then I realized what she'd done. Even her nostalgia was manipulation, a plea to rewrite the narrative back under her control. I tore the photo in half. Not out of rage. Out of reclamation. I didn't need to erase my memories. I just needed to stop pretending they were safe ones. The next morning, I made breakfast. Coffee. Toast. Sunlight streaming through clean windows. I unlocked my front door without flinching. Turned on music without bracing for someone to judge the volume. Freedom doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it's just the quiet click of a new lock. Sometimes it's just choosing yourself, over and over, until it finally feels natural. A full year passed before the next message arrived. By then, the air in our house felt completely different. Still. Calm. Honest. The walls didn't echo with anxiety anymore. Every inch of space finally felt like it belonged to us. Garrett and I had built small sacred rituals. Friday takeout nights. Saturday morning coastal drives. Late night laughter that didn't have to be whispered or hidden. The kind of life that doesn't need defending. Our first anniversary came quietly. We didn't plan some elaborate trip. We simply decided to take the same Honda, our Honda, and drive until the ocean appeared. The same vehicle that had started a war now carried us into peace. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The sky was watercolor that evening, lavender fading into gold. We parked near a cliff overlooking the Pacific, the sound of waves rough but honest against the rocks below. Garrett leaned against the hood, looking out at the endless horizon. "Remember when you said you'd never dance again after that wedding?" he asked. I laughed. Yeah. Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. Like what? Like thinking I needed them to feel complete. He smiled. You were complete the day you said no. Everything after was just cleanup. We stayed there until the sun melted into the ocean, our headlights blending with the last threads of daylight. It felt symbolic, leaving the past in shadow, driving towards something steady and real. When we got home, there was an envelope in our mailbox. No return address, but I recognized that handwriting instantly. My stomach didn't twist this time. It just settled into acceptance. Inside was a single card. Cream-colored paper. Gold-edged. Her handwriting elegant and sharp as ever. We miss you. We love you. Come back when you're ready to be part of this family again. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough for the ink to stop feeling like a threat. There was a time when that kind of message would have broken me wide open. Sent me spiraling into guilt, into apology, into another exhausting cycle of surrender. But now? Now I could see it for exactly what it was. An invitation not to reconnect, but to regress. Garrett walked up behind me, reading over my shoulder. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I tore the card in half. The sound was quiet. Almost polite. Then I dropped both pieces into the trash. People think closure comes from reconciliation. From hugs and apologies and tearful reunions. It doesn't. It comes from refusal. From refusing to step back into rooms that once required you to shrink yourself down to nothing.